Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes to make sure everybody's able to log in. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes. We're glad everyone can join us for today's program, which we're presenting Pamela Brigham, who will present her program, Getting the Most Out of Your MyHeritage DNA Results. We have a few announcements first. This program is presented in partnership with the Santa Cruz Public Libraries on the library's Zoom meetings platform, and we thank our library partners, Sarah Jones, Victor Willis, and Jessica Goodman, for their assistance in supporting our program today. Just a reminder, we also have in-person viewing in the upstairs meeting room at the downtown Santa Cruz Library. No registration required for in-person viewing. You can watch the Zoom presentations on the large monitor, and society members are available after the programs to answer questions. It's a fun way to participate in the Zoom programs in the company of fellow genealogists. For details, you can contact Mike Epperson or join us at 1 p.m. in the library meeting room, and I hope some of you are there today. We have a new focus group, Genealogists Helping Genealogists, facilitated by Leslie Losey. The next meeting will be in person on Tuesday, October 10, from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. in the genealogy room at the downtown library. This group will meet at the same time and place on the second Tuesday of each month. So if you have a genealogy question or want to review research strategies with other researchers, this group will foster collaboration in a small group setting. So we invite you to join us for that on October 10th. We're trying to get back to some in-person events. The DNA Special Interest Group met earlier today, and we will hold the next DNA Special Interest Group meeting on Tuesday, November 7th at 10 a.m. The DNA group meets in person at the upstairs meeting room at the downtown library. If you're interested in obtaining handouts from this group, you can access those on the Genealogical Society website, which I will put in the chat later this afternoon, and just click on lecture recordings and handouts. And if you have not yet renewed your membership for the coming year, please do so now. Our membership year runs from July 1 through June 30th. Dues continue to be a very reasonable $25 for the year. So please send in your dues right away. Thanks. You should be receiving the October, November, December issue of our Society newsletter any day now. I got mine yesterday, so you should maybe have already received yours. It's not too early, though, to be thinking about an article you might contribute to the next newsletter. Please send articles about your genealogical endeavors, brick walls, successes, and research tips to our editor, Lisa Robinson, by December 15. I have a couple of announcements about upcoming programs. On November 7th, local historian Ross Eric Gibson will present a program about why Santa Cruz isn't Los Angeles yet. And in lieu of our regular program in December, we will get together for our annual holiday luncheon. We are still sorting out the exact date, time, and venue for the luncheon, but more details will be sent to our members soon. For our program on January 2 of 2024, I will facilitate our yearly genealogical writing session. It's time to get back to some in-person programming, so this session will be in person at the downtown library in the upstairs meeting room. I will discuss drawing out your memories, and we will focus on some strategies for evoking personal memories so we can write about them. We also hope to make this a hybrid event with an in-person presenter, which will be a bit different than the Zoom programs we have hosted for the past 3 years. So we hope you will join us for that, a good way to get the new year started. Now, let's get to our program today. We are delighted to welcome Pamela Brigham. Pamela will show us how to get the most out of our MyHeritage DNA results. She will review how to evaluate the ethnicity estimates, how to use the analysis tools at MyHeritage, including the Chromosome Browser, AutoCluster, and Ethnicity Map tools. Pamela worked in the technology industry for almost 20 years and has applied her technology skills to effectively document her genealogical research. She enjoys teaching genealogy classes about using FamilySearch, Ancestry, MyHeritage, FindMyPast, and newspaper research. Pamela is president of the well-respected Silicon Valley Computer Genealogy Group, and she is a frequent presenter at the Ancestor Roundup in Seaside each January. Pamela received a certificate in genealogy studies from Boston University. Please join me in giving Pamela Brigham a warm Zoom welcome. Welcome, Pamela.
Thank you, Gail. Appreciate that. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. You should be able to see my slideshow of DNA with MyHeritage.
Yes, it shows perfectly.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to cover a couple things in a slideshow, and then honestly, I'm just going to go over to MyHeritage web page because it's on Zoom. That is one of the nice, easy benefits of being able to then just kind of walk through MyHeritage DNA results and what you can expect, and walking through what all's available for evaluating those DNA results. So a couple things. One key thing I do want to mention, and I'll talk about this towards the end as far as uploading your DNA. If you've taken a DNA test with Ancestry, 23andMe, or Family Tree DNA, you can take and upload those results. You can download them from whoever you took it through, and then upload them to MyHeritage for free this week, and you get access to all those tools for free until October 8th. And you get access to them for as long as you remain a user on MyHeritage, which just requires an email address. So that's a key thing. If you've been holding off saying, do I want to, put up any DNA up on MyHeritage, do it this week because you get access to those tools for free. Otherwise, it ends up being $30 that you end up having to pay to get access to all the tools we're going to talk about today. So keep that in mind. As mentioned, you can take a MyHeritage DNA test, or you can upload one. These are just some quick little key points. MyHeritage health results do actually require that you have a MyHeritage DNA test. You can't just upload and get health results. Also, ethnicity results are updated automatically. Before we got started here, I was talking with Sarah a little bit about ethnicity results and what they are, and to take them with a grain of salt. But besides that, let's go ahead and just get into kind of the overview here of MyHeritage. So you've taken a MyHeritage DNA test. At some point, you'll get notified. You activated the test, you took your cheek swab, you sent it back to them, and then you got notified of, hey, your results are ready. Okay, now what? I remember taking a DNA test, when they first started coming out. I took one, probably the first one about 10 years ago, and I got the results and I looked at it and went, great, so what? Now it's a little bit more interesting. We've got a few tools out there, got a few tools to help you evaluate things. This is MyHeritage's DNA page. This is my page up there. When you first log in here, you get taken to an overview, which shows you an ethnicity estimate. You can see here that right now it says I'm 69% English, 21% North and West European, 9%, almost 10% other countries. It also shows here DNA matches. It shows a couple things. This is close family. So immediate family, think aunts, uncles, siblings, all the way up through first cousins. And then extended family, these DNA matches are first cousins once removed through second cousins once removed. And then distant relatives. These DNA matches are third cousins once removed and distant fourth cousins and beyond, distant relatives there, distant cousins. You can see I've got two close family. Those are my parents. That's my mom and dad. And extended family, I've got 10 matches there. And then I've got 15,583 distant relatives. And if you think I've managed to get through and identify all 15,000 distant relatives and how I'm related, yeah, you'd be sadly mistaken on that one. So a couple things on this overview. The other thing on here is locations of your matches. You can see primarily they're in the US. A lot of people in the US have done DNA testing. You do have some outside of the US. I've got a healthy amount there in the United Kingdom, then some in Australia. But I do have DNA results from all over the world here. You know, everything like Romania to I've got people I'm related to over in Norway and France and all the way around the world. I've got people that I'm related to here. And I can click on any of these and it will happily filter out all the DNA matches that I'm related to for that country. But we'll get into another way to access that additional information in just a second. So other ways to access some of the other menus here is you've got you can view the full ethnicity estimate here. You can view your DNA matches here as well. So let's talk about a couple things across the top here. Right now you see it says Pamela Brigham. This is you. It's nice, happily let you know. I can also then, if I want to see my dad's information, I can click on my dad. If I want to see my mom's information, I can click on my mom there. I will say one thing I've noticed is this ethnicity estimate has been a little flaky lately on MyHeritage. It is there. It will come up eventually. Don't know why it's been flaky, but it has. Now, here's the fun part. Take a look at this ethnicity estimate. You'll see here that it says kit, and it starts with FT. That means family tree DNA. That's a kit that I have uploaded from Family Tree DNA to MyHeritage. This begins with MH. This is my MyHeritage DNA kit. I can't say that easily. This begins with AN. That's an Ancestry DNA kit that I've taken and uploaded here as well. So if you look at this ethnicity estimate, this has me as 69% English. For MyHeritage, it's got me all the way up to 71% English. And Ancestry's down to about 63% English. So depending upon which kit you feel the need to look at, hey, you're going to get different ethnicity estimates. Take your ethnicity estimates with a grain of salt. Use them to as potentially hints or starting points. And when we take a look at ethnicity estimates and genetic groups, take those with hints as well about possible where your ancestors might be from. If you have uploaded your DNA in the past, when you had full access to MyHeritage, or if you've uploaded during any of their other times where they allowed full access or free access to any of these tools, that's for life. If you uploaded during one of those times that they allowed free access, like this week, so if you upload this week, you get free access to all these tools, that's for life. That's as long as you remain a user account on their system. So let's talk a little bit about ethnicity estimates here. Ethnicity estimates, this is a nice little overview. I can make it bigger if I want here. If I click on any one of these, it takes me to a nice little information about this ethnicity. So if I want to see kind of English, it'll take me more information about Britain. I can scroll through my different ethnicities here by clicking on these arrows, left or right arrows. So I can look at North and West European. And keep in mind something with, especially with the North and West European ethnicities, people migrated a lot in Europe. People migrated a lot, yeah, really throughout Europe. So you might see an ethnicity come up and go, wait, where did that come from? Again, people were migrating a lot. So take these with a grain of salt. I've got 8% Scandinavian. I've also got some West Asian in there. As I was telling Sarah before the start of this, I'm not sure where the West Asian comes from in my family tree. I'm starting to narrow it down, but who knows? There could be a lot of, there could be an unexpected family event in there. But that's what they've come up with for ethnicity for me. And again, who knows? It could be wrong. I get different ethnicity estimates depending upon what site I'm on. So as always, take these with a grain of salt. Now, One thing they also show in here are what they call genetic groups. And genetic groups, there's a nice little definition here. If you click on the little I button next to genetic groups confidence level, genetic groups provide an enhanced understanding of the places your ancestors came from across 2,100, and I think they're up to 2,111 total geographic regions. What does it mean? It means that there are genetic similarities between you and the people in that group. They say between that and the group's founding mothers and fathers, but between you and the people in that group, there are genetic similarities. So you can see here under English, and there was a lot of English migration, and I've got a huge portion of English ancestry. So you can see that. And you can see probably how some of that migration took effect. Down along the bottom here, I'm scrolling through a timeline. And you're able to scroll through that timeline and kind of say, okay, look at probably the 1800s, 1850s. That's when most of my ancestors, by that point in time, most of my ancestors had come over to the US. And hey, there's a lot of English in there. So yeah. The cool thing about these, one, I can scroll through different genetic groups that I have here. One fun thing about these is if I'm in the US, I can take a look at some of the different states that this would have been available in. Also, it shows me common surnames that may have been associated with this. Common given names. I've got so many John, Mary, Elizabeth, Williams, and Sarahs in my family tree already. Hey, that doesn't do me much good, but you never know. Common ethnicities that also show up in there, and here's some of the related groups as well. And if I go back here, this gets me back to just the regular ethnicity results. Now I can change this confidence level on this genetic groups to high, and then I only show up with the UK and Ireland. Or I can set it to low, and I end up with showing all 8 different genetic groups that I'm a part of. Again, take it with a grain of salt. They're great for saying, okay, if I have a bunch of English ancestors, they probably migrated to this area. If I'm looking at the Midwestern USA, they probably migrated somewhere in here during their lifetime. The one thing that does annoy me about this is it does default to 1900 to 1950. I think all of my ancestors were actually here by that point in time. One brief note on how MyHeritage actually determines some of its ethnicity results. They use what's called reference populations. Reference populations are families that have been determined to be in that area for a significant portion of time. Think like they've been in that area for at least 4 or 5 generations. Now, there's not much in the way of information on the reference populations that they use to determine their ethnicity results, other than they've looked at families that are specifically in that area, either through their family trees, I would think is how they've looked at it, and or through surveys that they sent to families in the area to find out, hey, have your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents always lived here? And then they use that along with some algorithms to go, okay, your DNA kind of shares some similarities with this, and so that's why you end up as this ethnicity. That's what reference populations are. You could probably email MyHeritage if you want more information on their reference populations, but that's about the information that I have at this point. So that's the overview ethnicity estimates. Let's talk here about DNA matches. DNA matches are kind of the fun stuff for me. DNA matches, there's a lot that you can do with DNA matches. So this is where you get into kind of the heart of the matter of, there's a couple questions that you always have to ask yourself when you're taking a DNA test. What are you using this for? Are you using this for just finding out what your ethnicity is? Do you just want to know, should you be wearing a kilt? Should you be wearing lederhosen? And you can feel free to use a DNA test for that. Or are you looking for DNA matches? Are you looking to find out potentially more family members that you can connect with and that you can talk to? This is where you get into DNA matches. Now, as mentioned, I have like over 15,000 DNA matches. I used to have like 38,000 DNA matches. MyHeritage started filtering out some of the smaller segment matches. So anything that was below, I believe, a shared centimorgan of 8 centimorgans or 7 or 8 centimorgans, they pretty much eliminated all those matches, going, no, that's too small of a match. There's no easy way to determine if you're actually related to them. So they took those out, and that knocked me down to a nice whopping 15,000 DNA matches. So what can I do with these? A few things. One, make sure that, hey, are you looking at the right kit? Because I will get different lists depending upon if I'm looking at my dad, my mom, or myself. Also, which kit are you looking at? This is key. Now, for better, for worse, for me, because F was the first test that I uploaded here, this is where all of my associations have been with DNA matches. It defaults to this kit because it was the first kit that I uploaded. That means that I've put all the notes, labels, everything else under this kit. So do make sure that if you decide to switch between kits, note that it doesn't retain the same labels or notes between the kits. It's basically you get lists of DNA matches and labels and notes and all that per each kit. So I usually just leave it on the default here on the family tree DNA kit that I uploaded. That's where I started, and we'll get into some of these other features here in a second. So what's an easy way to manage some of these DNA matches? Well, there's a couple things you can do. You can filter which DNA matches you're looking at. You can also sort. So I can sort by the amount of shared DNA, which is what it defaults to, is how much DNA do I, share with these matches. That's a key thing. The more DNA that I share, the closer the match, which means theoretically, the more likely I am to know who they are. I can filter by shared segments. So the number of more segments that I share with them, with someone, the more centimorgans, more percentage of DNA I'm likely to share with them, the more closer we're likely to be related. If I'm looking for larger segments, I can look for those as well by sorting by the largest segment. I can also sort by full name. So if I'm looking for someone specific in here, I am able to sort by the full name, and then I'm able to click on the little search button to search for that full name if I want to. I can also sort by most recent. So most recent is really nice. If you've gone through, or if you have a very small number of DNA matches, or you've gone through and really happily labeled all the ones you want to label, you've labeled all your close family, you've labeled all your all the first cousins through second cousins, and everybody else you're not really worried about. So you just want to see the most recent matches to see if there's any more close matches that you want to go ahead and get in touch with. You're able to sort by most recent matches as well. Now, let's talk a little bit about filters. How do I take some of this 15,000 and filter it down to something more manageable that I can actually work with? Well, let's start with a few things. I've got 4 things across here: tree details, relationships, locations, and labels. And I turn those on and off by just clicking on filters here. So tree details. Few different things here. Has theory of family relativity, has smart matches, shared surnames, shared places, has a family tree. Tree details come into whether or not this person has a family tree. So if I'm looking at some of these matches here, here's a guy, he doesn't have a family tree. If I go up here and filter on has family tree, then suddenly a few people disappear, and I've got more people that I can look at. And usually if someone has a family tree, it's a lot easier to figure out potentially how you're related to them. So that is one way to filter out more easily start figuring out how you're related to these matches. The thing that I love to start with is has theory of family relativity. So what MyHeritage has done has taken family trees and records, and with your DNA matches has tried to figure out for you, how are you related to this DNA match? And so they've come up with something that they call the theory of family relativity. And you can happily sit here and filter out whether everybody that has a theory of family relativity. And this is a great place to start, because with DNA matches, one of the things you really want to do is start figuring out who your known matches are, figuring out how you're related to these matches. And this is key, especially if you've got some close family in there or some extended family. So remember, extended family is first cousins once removed through second cousins once removed. And close is through first cousins. If you've got some close and extended family in there and you can figure out how you're related to those matches, you can really then start eliminating portions of your family tree to look at to try to figure out how you're related to one of these people. And you'll see with this nice little filter, it took that down from 15,599 matches down to 28 DNA matches that I can more easily figure out how I'm related to. And some of these I've gone in and confirmed, but I can go in here and look at that theory of family relativity really easily. So for someone, this person who I have no idea who this person actually is, I can come in here and go, okay, you know, how does this person show up? All right, you've got the overrackers in there. She's an overracker. Good to know. Now, keep in mind, this says, hey, you know, this is probably a shared match between the family trees. Take it with a grain of salt, because we all know just how overwhelmingly accurate the family trees are on any of these online websites, right? Yeah, so family trees can be, you know, somewhat accurate, inaccurate, who knows? But you can go in here. They give several different paths for this theory of family relativity. It's great to be able to really kind of go in and look at, hey, this is potentially how I'm related to this person. This is what they've kind of estimated. Again, review this, make sure it's accurate, because it may not be. It may not be at all. Now, when I go back, of course, it's turned off my filters. But again, you can get back into tree details. Keep in mind, this is one, only if someone has a tree. And two, these smart matches, shared surnames, shared places, all of that is based on what someone has actually put in a family tree up on MyHeritage. So the other thing you can do is filter on relationships. Again, we saw in the overview that kind of nice big set of circles where you've got close family, extended family. Now I've got a relatively small set of close family here because I just have my mom and dad. If I wanted to look at extended family, though, this happily knocks it down to the 10 DNA matches that show up at close family, which are, again, first cousins once removed through second cousins once removed. So you can easily filter down to this and then try to figure out how you're related to some of these DNA matches. Makes it easier than necessarily going through the distant relatives, which are 15,587 DNA matches. So it's definitely makes it easier to do some filtering here to start with your DNA matches. So, and anytime I'm looking at one of these, like if I've got distant relatives, you'll notice this little X here. I can just click on that X and it takes me out here to just relationships, to no filters whatsoever. So these will have something in pink if there's an actual filter on it. If If it's not in pink, then there's no filter on it. I can also filter by location. So say I'm looking for someone over in the UK and I want to see who I'm related to over there for DNA matches. This shows me everybody who's located in the UK. That means they're located there currently based on what address they've entered or put into MyHeritage. Does it mean that our relationship came through the UK? Who knows? It might have been an ancestor that came over here and then went back to the UK. It might have been an ancestor that from a different, that came over here from some other place and then ended up going back in with someone to the UK. It means they're located in the UK today. So keep that in mind. The other fun thing, and I really do like using this, is labels. Labels helps a lot, especially when you've got known ancestors here that you've tested, either that you've tested or that they've tested on their own. When you've got known ancestors in here, labels helps immensely in terms of kind of sorting through everything. You can set up favorite DNA matches. So if I want to look at anybody that I've marked at favorite, I can select that and apply. And eventually it might show up. Clear that out for a sec. If I want to look at anybody there, Haley Pollard eventually shows up. If I want to look at anybody on my dad's side or my dad's maternal side. Now, these are labels that I've created in here. I've color-coded them the way I wanted to, and I've added them to an individual match. They don't just automatically appear one way or the other. You have to actually go in and do this. So how do we end up actually doing this? Well, we get into reviewing matches. So a couple things. That gives you a little overview of kind of this menu that's available on just your DNA matches page. Once you're here, you can then get into actually reviewing a DNA match. So you'll notice a couple things here. Let's take a look at a couple people here. This is Karen. I know who Karen is. I saw Karen recently. Karen is my first cousin once removed. She is my dad's first cousin. John Sproul, until recently, I had no idea who John Sproul was. He is actually a parent's second cousin. Now, MyHeritage has started doing this thing called probable relationships. While you're in this overview, you can click on that and it'll show you, hey, there's an 82.7% probability that this is your parent's first cousin. That's an estimate, and we'll get into it. It shows you a little bit more information when you're reviewing a DNA match. So we'll get into a little bit more of that in just a minute here. But it is a nice way. They took out all the twice removed, once removed, all of that kind of stuff so that they wanted a way to probably more easily explain it. They took a look at a couple things. They took a look at the shared DNA, so the amount of centimorgans that you share with someone, and they took a look at the person's age. And this is kind of a nice thing because you can look at the centimorgans you share with someone, and you really have to know, okay, is this person older than I am? Are they at the same age I am? Are they younger than I am? To get a better idea of how you're related to this person. So having them do that kind of for you already, it helps a little bit. But you'll notice a couple of other differences here between Karen and John. Karen here has a family tree that's managed by David Bruns, her husband, and she appears in that family tree with 4,700 people. Because of that, MyHeritage has figured out a theory of family relativity, which I've confirmed. It shows me we've got some shared ancestral surnames. We've got some shared ancestral places. John's not connected to a family tree, which means I really don't have anything else for John other than, hey, you're related. So that's a bit more of a challenge then with John to try to figure out how I'm related to him. So let's start with John because John has less information here. So let's review this DNA match. So This tells me, based on this probable relationship, that this is John's probably going to be my parent's second cousin. Slipped up there for a sec. So this gives me a probability. He's probably my parent's second cousin. He's about 60% probable. Could be a third cousin. Gives me a nice little diagram here of possible relationships too. I can do a couple things with this diagram. If I think it might be a half relationship, I can view the half relationships that are there, and I can view all relationships, or I can view full relationships. The other thing is I can show probabilities for the most recent common ancestor. So this says that it's probably 70.3% probability that my great-great-grandparents are our most recent common ancestor, and that he's probably a parent's second cousin. So you can see that here. It's actually really nice and useful. What I did with John is, because I knew that he was probably going to be my parent's second cousin, I've got a tree over, a much nicer tree over on Ancestry. I use MyHeritage more for DNA matches so far than I do for trees. But I went over to my tree on Ancestry, went up a couple levels to my great-great-grandparents and said, okay, coming down from there, who could this match possibly be? After doing a little bit of evaluation and looking through where the first cousin level would be, the second cousin level would be, and realizing there'd be a second cousin to my dad, to my parents, then, and I'll show you how I knew he was a second cousin to my dad in a second. But looking at that, I was then able to figure out exactly where he fit in a family tree. And give me just a sec here. I need to move something down. If I go over to Ancestry, log in here really quick, look at my trees, look at my Brigham family tree. I was able to take a look at, this is my dad. So I know he's going to be on this level. Go up to my great-great-grandparents and go, okay, it could have been on a couple different ways that this could have gone. Let me show you how I figured out some more details about how I'm potentially related to John here. So let me scroll down through what else I've got here. Okay, this is one of those key things that it's really nice to have people in here tested that I know how I'm related to them. So I know that how I'm related to my dad. That one's a little obvious, sorry. But I also know how I'm related to Karen. And I know that Karen's a first cousin once removed. She's a first cousin once removed on my dad's mother's side. So that really helped me when I was actually looking at this family tree. I'm like, okay, if I'm looking at my dad, I'm looking at my dad's mother's side. So I'm looking at this on probably either the Richards or Caldwell side of the family. Well, when I looked at the Caldwell side, she has a lot of people in her family tree. And I went, do I want to go through all of these and see potentially where the first cousins might be? Do I want to go through all of these? Yeah, let me start on the Richards side. That might be a little more easier with what he had in his family tree and looking at his siblings and how they might come down for here. And I got lucky with this one a little bit because I was able to then go ahead and look at these different family members and see when it got down to the different cousin levels, the first cousin levels, and so on. Let's see if I can get back to where I was looking at that. No, that wasn't it. Sorry. But I was able to then more easily look at, was more able to easily figure out based on his relatives, William H. Richards and his relatives, and the hints that I was getting for him, how I was actually related to John Sproul, because he ended up being a second cousin. He ended up being at a level down over here that I was able to figure out. This made it a lot easier knowing that he was on my dad's side, he was on my dad's maternal side, and I knew that through these shared matches, shared DNA matches. Let me be specific about that, because you can also have shared matches based on your family trees. This is shared DNA matches. Now, this is all autosomal stuff. And we don't get into really any X or Y matches here at this point. So shared DNA matches. The other thing that's nice about this is this tells me the probable relationship to me for this shared match and the probable relationship to the match that I'm looking at, so John Sproul. So this made it easier to figure out, hey, this is probably my dad's second cousin. Now, Karen, who's my dad's first cousin, is probably her second cousin as well. Okay, so that means I really needed to look at my dad's maternal side. Now, there's a bunch of additional people in here that I could look at and potentially use them as well to figure out how I'm related to John Sproul. Now, a couple things about John here. Again, I added information here once I figured out how I was related to him. I added a note that he comes in through the Richards line. He's the second cousin once removed on my dad's side. I can contact him here. I can save this note if I want to add information to it. Again, keep in mind, this is all looking at this kit, which is FT, my family tree DNA kit, and that's where my notes are at. So if I ever want to look back at those notes, I need to make sure I'm looking at that kit. So now, let's go back to DNA matches. Let's look at Karen here. Let's review her as a DNA match. I get a lot more information here. One, to start off, I've got a theory of family relativity that it's all, and I can view the full theory from here if I want. It's going to give me that to start with, and this is because Karen has a tree associated with her. Gives me possible relationships again, and I can get more information. It gives me shared ancestral surnames, so surnames that we might have in common. It gives me shared ancestral places, so we see where some of the different common places that we have, and some of those are not useful, but okay. Shared DNA matches. Again, we get into those shared DNA matches. One thing that's nice is you can get into, like for here, if you're looking at the shared DNA matches that I have with Karen, I know that Karen is on my dad's maternal side. So if I'm looking at, say, Beverly Jean Keel here, I can click on this and easily add her to my dad's maternal side and apply that label there. So now I've got her labeled as well. So I can easily go through all these shared matches if I want to, because they share matches with both Karen and my dad. So dad's side, dad's maternal side. I can do all of that if I want to. It makes a really quick and easy way to evaluate or to at least group a bunch of matches together, which helps a lot when you go back to this main screen. You can then say you want to take a day and look at all the matches that are on your paternal side or your, in this case, my dad's maternal side. If I wanted to look at all of those matches, I could. Maybe I've got a more well-built out family tree there. I'm able to do that. So that's one easy way to go ahead and manage your DNA matches. Sorry, that's not a match. Reviewing your parents' match honestly doesn't get you much. It's like, hey, yeah. Reviewing another match that's not quite as close may get you some more information. So let's take a look here again back at Karen. Let's continue scrolling through her as a DNA match. We have the shared DNA matches, as I mentioned. We scroll down through that. It's got pedigree charts in here. It's got pedigree. It shows basically the family tree that Karen has. It shows that pedigree chart here. It also has one for me that I can take a look at. And again, it has one for Karen that I can take a look at. So Know that if you agree to that, hey, your tree could be public that way for someone to look at up on MyHeritage. If you attach it to your DNA, then people will very much be able to look at that family tree. Keep that in mind. This is a chromosome browser. This doesn't get me much in this case when I'm just looking at it in this context. It does tell me what segments that I share with Karen, and I do share a decent number of segments with her. She is a first cousin once removed. I can download that shared DNA info from here and use that over on things like DNA Painter or any other third-party tools that might need specific segment information about the segments you match someone with. This is where you can easily download that shared data for a specific match. So that's reviewing someone with a family tree, and we talked about John reviewing someone without a family tree. Now, a couple other things you'll see here in actually reviewing a DNA match, and whether I review John or review Karen doesn't necessarily matter here. John, it'll be easier to get to. You notice these little things over on the side here? Well, these are triangulated segments that are coming up in the chromosome browser. So let's click on that, see what it tells us. So this is a chromosome browser. So this is showing all the chromosomes here, and it's showing what on each person, what segments you share with that person. So you'll notice Karen here's kind of labeled that yellow gold color, and John's labeled red here. You'll also notice here they've got some triangulated segments. So what does triangulated segments mean? It means that here it's showing that I'm related to John. It's showing how I'm related to Karen. Triangulated segments also means that John is related to Karen as well. And you're like, well, yeah, because, you know, you're related to both of them. Aren't they both related to each other? Well, yes and no. Not exactly. Let me show you something as well here. So in this chromosome browser, if I add another person, and these are all my DNA matches, I can find a specific name, I can scroll through them, I can add whoever I want in here. Let me add in Haley Pollard. And you're looking at this. So this was kind of funny because I was just randomly adding people in and out one day and discovered this. This is, you're like, wait a minute, those overlap. Shouldn't they be related to each other? Not exactly. What this means is, having seen that I'm related to each of these individuals, but what this means is that John and Karen are not related to Haley. Okay, so I know that John and Karen are related to but they're not related to each other, but they're not related to Haley. That means Haley's probably on the other side of the family because John and Karen are related on my dad's side. They're not showing as related to Haley. So Haley's probably on my mom's side of the family. And we'll tell you, I actually do know that Haley is on my mom's side of the family. But keep that in mind when looking at this chromosome browser, is that each of these lines here that show, you know, how you're related to someone, like for example, here it says you and Karen are related here at this segment, that there's a segment there for your mom's side and your dad's side. That makes up each chromosome. You get 50% from each parent. So here I'm related to Karen. This happens to be on my dad's side. Here I'm related to Haley. This happens to be on my mom's side. Keep that in mind when looking at some of these looking at this chromosome browser and looking at some of these segments, and you look at something and goes, wait, this overlaps. Then start eliminating people out of this by either add or removing DNA matches. So again, if I remove Haley Pollard out of this and then compare just Karen and John again, I get triangulated segments. If you have a whole bunch that overlap, see if you can, you know, take some out, put some in, do some additional comparisons to see if you can figure out where you've got triangulated segments, because then it means these are also related to each other. Might help you more easily figure out how you're related if you know that they're related to each other as well. Now, this got us into the chromosome browser through our DNA matches. So we got there by going to DNA matches. We were reviewing a DNA match. And Sorry, I should have chosen a different path there. And we got in here by clicking on one of this, the triangulated segments through the DNA matches. The other way to get to the chromosome browser is through DNA tools. So this is a set of DNA tools that MyHeritage has come up with, and they added one recently. They added one recently enough that it hey, I had to go and update all sorts of presentations. Thank you, MyHeritage, for that. But this is another way you can get to the chromosome browser. So we explored a little bit about that already. Again, you start with you. You have a maximum of 7 people here that you can actually add, and you can click through and add whoever you want in here. The only annoying thing is this doesn't show any labels, so you kind of have to know what names you might be looking for to begin with. And there's no triangulated segments. I can narrow this or decrease this if I want to say, okay, are there any triangulated segments that are at least 2 centimorgans long? Or, hey, I want to limit things down to triangulated segments that are 8 centimorgans. And do some limiting there if I need to. Okay, we've got a little bit of an overlap there. So maybe we go back and look at more closely Wilmer Todd Blackaby and Michelle Mole Zapata, because we're seeing something overlap there, but we're not seeing much overlap really on anything else. There is some explanation down at the bottom here as well, in terms of how many segments we might share with some of these matches. So I'll be honest, I don't use the chromosome browser that much. I have a tendency to download some of the chromosome information and then port it over into DNA Painter. If you want a good primer on DNA Painter, I think it's tomorrow that Johnny Pearl, who's the creator of DNA Painter, is actually doing an intro to DNA Painter presentation on legacy tree webinars. If you just Google search legacy webinars, then their webpage will come up and you can find the intro to DNA Painter there. So that's something to keep in mind. DNA Painter is fairly useful for painting, kind of seeing how your DNA matches all relate to each other too. That's one of the DNA tools. Let's look at the other DNA tools here. CM Explainer. This one's kind of fun, honestly. So I can enter in any shared amount of DNA and my age, and say my match's age, and submit. And this says, hey, your most probable relationship is your parent's second cousin. If you've ever calculated out probabilities, you don't ever want to get into that, trust me, unless you really, really like math. There's a lot of math that goes into calculating probabilities. I've done it once in my life. That was probably enough for me to ever wane me off from ever doing it again. But they do this nicely in the background for you. Yay. This shows that this person is more than likely my parent's second cousin. And it tells me that, hey, my most recent common ancestor could be a great-great-grandparent, great-great-grandparents, their third great-grandparents. So this gives you a nice way to narrow it down, especially when you're trying to figure out how you're related to somebody. This is a really nice way to say, okay, if I know I'm related to this person on my paternal side of the family, so my dad's side of the family, and our most recent common ancestor is probably either our great-great-grandparents or our, great-grandparents, then you know what? You've narrowed it down to just a small section of names here that you then get to go look at their family. That is a huge difference. The other thing it helps is when you're contacting someone and saying, hey, we might be related. According to this DNA test, we're related. We match at DNA. Here's the surnames that I have that on how we might be related. Here's the surnames that go along with, my great-great-grandparents, my great-grandparents. Do any of these surnames look recognizable to you? Or how do they fit in your family tree? it really helps if if you need to contact someone who might not have a family tree up in MyHeritage. This is great for really being able to narrow down those surnames that you might be able to hand off to that person to say, hey, this is how this is where we might have a common ancestor. Does any of this look familiar to you? So this is a really helpful tool for being able to do that. You don't have to put your ages in. These are optional. If I just knew that I had shared 123.4 centimorgans with someone, it says, hey, your most probable relationship is this. Second cousin's child, parent, second cousins. And this is why ages really come in handy, because it can narrow those probabilities down so much farther than if you just put in the shared DNA. And so this is something they released this year at RootsTech. And they've been adding to it and modifying it a little bit ever since. But it is really helpful for kind of narrowing down your most recent common ancestors and how you might be related to a match. It's really helpful for that. It's one of their nicer tools that I like using. We talked about Chromosome Browser. The next one is auto clusters. And you're like, great, you go in here and you just, hey, pick a kit, click generate. What does that do? That eventually, if I click generate right now, it happily says, great, they're being generated. I'm going to send you an email when it's done. Thanks. And you're like, okay. So they then eventually send you an email. That email will contain a zip file. That zip file can get expanded into 3 files here. One's a README, and do go in and read the README. I'm not going to bring this up right now, but do actually read it, because it tells you what centimorgans what values they limited. It tells you who got eliminated from the shared matches, from the matches they looked at, and why they got eliminated. So it explains a lot more. The other thing they then give you is this HTML page that, let me go up here. This is that HTML page. And happily, when you first load it, comes up like this, does this nice little animation, puts all these people into nice little clusters, this nice great graph. What I love here more, and understand I'm a spreadsheet geek, is I love the tables here, because this clusters people together who are most likely related to each other, which means if you can figure out how you're related to one of these, you might be able to more easily figure out how you're related to all of these people. And so it clusters them together. Now, a couple things to note. Up here, it says total number of DNA matches that it used in here is 75. And you're like, wait a minute, you have 15,599 on that first page. How do we get down to 75? Well, we have a minimum threshold of 35 and a max threshold of 400. That max threshold of 400 immediately eliminated all of my close family. By the way, it also, I think, eliminated Karen out of there as well. But yeah, so it immediately eliminated some of those. Shared DNA matches minimum threshold is 15 centimorgans. So that really eliminates a lot of people, a lot of my matches. But that's the bad news in terms of elimination. The good news is that now I've got these 75 matches that are clustered together, and they're probably related to each other in some way, shape, or form. And it gives me a little bit of detail about them here. I can click on each match and it'll take me over to them to review them if I want. The other thing it tells me that I love is who has a tree and how many people they have in that tree. Scott Mole has 4 people in the tree. Am I going to be able to figure out how I'm related to Scott Mole based on 4 people in his tree? Probably not. But Carly Hinkle's got 4,002 people in her tree. Am I going to be more likely to figure out how I'm related to Carly Hinkle because she's got 4,000 people in her tree? Probably. So let me take a look at Carly first, see if I can figure out how I'm related to her, and then see if I can figure out how that helps me figure out how I'm related to Scott. So a lot of this with figuring out how you're related to DNA matches is honestly process of elimination more than anything. If I can figure out how I'm related here to Beatrice Marie Jacobson, then maybe I can figure out more easily how I'm related to someone who only has, one person in their family tree. Or I've got Meredith Lorraine Morgan here, who's got 82,910 people in her family tree. Maybe it's easier to figure out how I'm related to her. I can do this with all these clusters by easily looking at this table. I've got John Spruill in here. You can see how he's related to some other people. I already know how I'm related to him. It does include the notes that I've got with him because I looked at that specific kit. So yeah, it makes it a lot easier with these clusters to be able to start figuring out who you want to look at first to potentially evaluate how you're related to them, to then either contact them, look at more information, or to get more information, or just noting in there, noting in that match how you're related to them, especially if you're trying to solve a brick wall and you're trying to figure out, okay, who's all the relations on, say, my mom's maternal side that I want to take a look at that might have information on how I'm related or to them, or how that might break through a brick wall. They might have more information that I don't have that can help me break through that brick wall. All of these tools are very much out there to really help you do that, to work with your matches more than anything, with the exception of maybe this tool, the Ethnicities Map. Yeah. These are ethnicities around the world. This is by country, so I can click in and, Canada is mostly composed of these ethnicities. These are the most common ethnicities in Canada, according to the MyHeritage's DNA users data. I can look at, if I look at the US, I can then look at a specific state. So if I look at California, I've got, according to the MyHeritage's DNA users data, most common ethnicities from California are English, Scandinavian, North and West European, Iberian, and Mesoamerican and Andean. So yeah, okay. It's kind of cool and fun to play around with. I haven't found a good way that it actually helps me that much in some of my research, but if I need a nice break from doing some DNA research, occasionally I'll come in and play with that. So what else do I have under DNA here? So we looked at really the overview, ethnicity, DNA matches, and DNA tools. Those are the key things to really look at when looking at your MyHeritage matches and what to do with them and kind of how to process them, how to connect with them, and how to really work with your DNA matches. You do have in here health reports, DNA kits, and you can upload DNA data. You can also order DNA kits. Health reports, they're in there. I've got health reports. They tell you a certain amount of information about your health. They're finding new information about health and DNA every day. So if you want it, go for it. I haven't found much useful information in it one way or another. I did found I'm not a carrier for anything. Okay, great. I guess. These are managing DNA kits. So these are all the DNA kits that I've got. This is my family tree DNA kit. I first uploaded that on November of 2016. It's been a while. So this is my MyHeritage DNA kit that I took. This is my Ancestry kit that I didn't feel the need to upload until 2021. This is my dad's DNA kit, my mom's DNA kit. And these are DNA kits that I've been purchased and they've ended up with other people who may or may not have done anything with them. That's fine. That's their business. Now over here, I have these vertical ellipses that I can click on. I can reassign this kit to a different person. I can view my ethnicity estimate, DNA matches, or I can delete the kit if I want to. If you've uploaded a kit and you delete it, hey, just upload it again, obviously. If you've got a MyHeritage kit and you delete this kit, then that's really a permanent deletion. You can't get that DNA data back. So if for some reason you need to delete a kit, be very careful about doing that with this. Now, a couple notes. Let's take a look at uploading a DNA kit. So you go in and you're like, great, I've taken my Ancestry DNA. And, now I want to upload that over to MyHeritage, especially because they're doing this lovely special promotion this week that all advanced DNA features are free forever for DNA uploaded this week. You're like, yippee, great. Now what? Well, let's start. Whose DNA are you uploading? Pick this, mine or someone else's. So say your brother took an Ancestry DNA kit and you've got his data from that. He's downloaded it to you. He sent it to you. Hey, you can go ahead and put his name in here. You can either select someone from your tree or you can just put a name in there. Now, you do have to note that I've obtained permission from the person listed above to manage her DNA data. And you do have to check this box. They are trusting you not to lie. So that's kind of the expectation here. They're asking, hey, have you read and accept the MyHeritage terms and conditions and the privacy policy, including the DNA services provision? Please do this before you upload DNA. Make sure you're good with everything. If you're uploading DNA for someone else, feel free to pass them links to the terms and conditions and the privacy policy as well for MyHeritage so they can read it if they want to. Processing of genetic data tells you how they're going to process this file. They'll collect the DNA data, other sensitive personal information, process it to provide information about ethnicity estimates, genetic groups. Again, they remind you to read their privacy policy. And, if you want to delete, you can withdraw your consent at any time for this by deleting your DNA data as described here. And then you have to explicitly consent to MyHeritage processing this DNA data file. Next one, upload for personal use. So you're confirming that the DNA you're uploading is not related to any law enforcement or forensic investigation. And you have to check that box before you can continue. This is if you want to enable DNA matches, hey, I'd always want to click yes on that, but that's up to you. Sharing data with DNA matches, I can choose whether I want to share ethnicity estimates and genetic groups with other DNA matches. I can share DNA segment data with DNA matches. I can select those if I want to. Do I want to participate in research? There's a DNA informed consent here as well that you can select. And then you get to this last page where you review and then you upload the file. And you're like, great, how do I get the file to begin with? Well, over here on the right. Download your raw DNA data from your provider, Ancestry, Family Tree DNA, or 23andMe. Click on the button that says how to download. And you can pick your provider here, either Family Tree DNA, 23andMe, or Ancestry, and they will walk you through the specific steps on how to download your data from one of those providers. So if you've taken an Ancestry DNA test and you've kind of like, should I upload to MyHeritage? This is the week to do it if you want free access to all those tools. So, and they will tell you exactly how to go in and download that data from Ancestry. They'll walk you through step by step on how to get to that data and how to enter your password, download your DNA data, all of that. They'll walk you through. You go through all these steps here, you click upload, you put in the file, and then a couple days later, and it does take a couple days to process. I think they say it takes at least 48 hours. I think they've said 48 to 72 hours lately, depending upon how much traffic they have. And then eventually you will get to one of these DNA screens again, where you'll have, now you may have to go in and select that different kit once you upload one. It does default to you. So, or it does default to the first kit you uploaded there, which was me. So that's some information there about how you upload your DNA to MyHeritage. That's about it. Let me do one quick check here on, let me go ahead and stop sharing briefly. There we go. And I just want to do a quick check, make sure I didn't miss anything. I have all these in a PowerPoint slide in case there's something wrong with internet connectivity. Nope. Okay. that is all the information I have on MyHeritage DNA kits. So let's take a look. I know there's a few questions, couple open questions over here in the Q&A. So let's take a look at a few of these. So is there information on site that has MyHeritage's reference populations? I don't know. You could probably email MyHeritage support, which is just support@myheritage.com, and ask them if they've got more information about their reference populations. They are great usually about response to their support email address. Have I noticed differences in matches that appear in your different kits or your parents' kits? I did a little bit. I've had matches that show up in my parents' kits that obviously don't show up in my kits because we've lost that DNA within just one generation between my parents' kits and my kits. I haven't noticed differences in matches between my different kits. Those usually all show up as the same matches from what I've seen. Is there any difference in the test results if you upload your results from another testing company versus taking a MyHeritage DNA test directly? Difference in test results that I've seen are really within the ethnicity results. We saw that a little bit. Let me bring that up briefly again. So you'll see it in the ethnicity results. The ethnicity estimates are definitely different between all three of them. And you don't even want to see my ethnicity estimates over on Ancestry because they're vastly different than what these are here. So again, that's why I take it with a grain of salt. There is, in terms of DNA matches, there really hasn't been a huge difference there between the different kits, other than my mom and dad are obviously going to have potentially slightly different matches than I will because I only inherited 50% of my DNA from each of them, which means they have additional DNA that they may match to that I may not have. So does MyHeritage give X matches? No. They give, this is all based on autosomal DNA at this point. And the autosomal DNA would normally have X matches in it, but they don't do anything with that at this point. Do you subscribe to all of the trees that you were showing us? Notice that when you click on a tree, it usually shows me very few people, and I'm guessing the rest are only available if you subscribe. Do I subscribe to all of the trees that I was showing you? No. So let's go back into DNA matches here, and let's take a look at Karen, because she has a decent tree there. So I'm sorry for the quick scrolling here. I don't subscribe to this tree at all for Karen's tree. This is a tree that she's made public, or that her husband rather has made public. And so I'm able to look at it that way. A lot of it depends upon what trees and what amount of the trees has been made public at MyHeritage, or if they're private. So that could make a difference. And thank you to Sarah for posting the link to the Johnny Pearl program in the chat. I appreciate that. Let's see, if you've mislabeled some of your matches. Let's go back into DNA matches. So if I'm looking at this DNA match, am I looking at the right kit? No. Let's look at the right kit here. If I click on this, click on check this person. So say I went in and labeled John Spruill wrong. Say I wanted to change my label on him. If I just click on this checkbox on the left here, then I can quickly uncheck any of these boxes on his labels. There's not an easy way to, I don't think there's an easy way to remove labels from everyone and start from scratch. But having said that, feel free to email MyHeritage support, which again is just support@myheritage.com, and ask them if there's a way that they can reset it for you. They may be able to do that easily. I don't think there's an easy way to just do that for everybody all at once. Okay, Esther, I'm almost 100% Ashkenazi Jewish, so I have endogamy. Is the 15% lower limit for the total shared DNA or for the longest segment? Referring to the auto clusters for the 15 centimorgans. That is minimum threshold, shared DNA matches, minimum threshold. That's a good question. I honestly don't know the answer to that. And let me see one thing on, because you used to be able to, there used to be some flexibility in this, but they may not have it anymore. Yeah, darn. There used to be a bit more flexibility in terms of whether or not you could set some of your min and max thresholds. So no, yeah, I don't really have a good answer for you on that one. Esther. Cluster. No, that didn't help there. Sorry about that. For place matches, what does it use? Place of birth, place of marriage, place of death, residence. Also, can you search for matches for a given surname combined with place names in a tree? How about searches for a person and their location? For example, I'd like to search for a cousin who lives in a particular place in Europe that may be from an area closer to where my family came from. Okay. That's getting a bit of a challenge there. So let's go back here up to DNA matches, and there's a couple things. One, so there's locations. So if you know that a DNA match that that your cousin lives, say your DNA match lives in the United Kingdom, you can look at all the people who live in the United Kingdom. But then you really can't, you can look and see if that, maybe their extended family that lives in that area. You might be able to see if they've got shared places or shared surnames on their tree that also live in the United Kingdom. So you can do multiple filtering here. That's probably about the only way you might be able to solve what you're looking for potentially. For place matches for this, there's a couple things. So under this locations is where the match currently lives at. The tree details are here. These shared places are the locations listed for that match in a family tree. So, their birthplace in the family that's listed in the family tree. It may or may not use residences at all when it's looking at family trees for shared places. It's definitely looking at birth and death locations for shared places. But again, those are shared places that are listed under that person's entry in the family tree. Keep that in mind. Let's see, place matches looks for matches of the place submitted by the DNA match in their profile. Yeah, whatever they want to put in, pretty much. So under locations here or under tree details, again, that shared place is whatever they've put in their family tree. Good, bad, or indifferent? Hey, that's again, we like to hope people are thorough on their family trees and their evaluations, but hey, we've all seen, I'm sure, family trees that are not as thorough or as well researched as we'd like them. And you end up with family trees that are not correct, to say the least. These locations, though, again, these are the locations that the user has actually listed as their location. And I think that's it for the questions at this point. Let me go ahead and stop sharing. Sarah, Gail, did I miss anything that in the chat by any chance? I haven't been keeping a full eye on that one, so.
I don't think you did. Our audience is most excellent at posting all their questions in the Q&A.
Awesome. We did put quite a number of messages in the chat. And just to clarify, yes, there is a handout and there are directions in the chat about how to access the handout. There also are directions in the chat about how to save the chat so that you will know how to access the handout. We put some other links and information in the chat as well. So I recommend that our attendees go click on the 3 little dots in the lower left-hand corner of the chat window to save the chat, because by saving it right at the end, you'll get the entire chat. Whereas if you saved it as you go along, you will only get whatever you saved to this point. Pamela, I want to thank you for showing us a bunch of strategies for evaluating our DNA matches at MyHeritage, and showing us by navigating around the site. I find that really helpful to see how the site navigates, and also for explaining how to make use of the MyHeritage DNA analytical tools. And I want to do a shout out to our attendees for posing some really excellent questions today. So give yourselves a hand, everybody. I urge our attendees to access the handout for the program. Pamela's prepared a really good handout. And as I said, there's a link in the chat. The program has been recorded and it will soon be available on the Santa Cruz Public Library's YouTube channel. And Pamela, how long do you have a time limit on how long we can have the recorded program there, or is it there indefinitely?
It's there indefinitely, as far as you know.
Okay, so this is great, because as we use MyHeritage, we're going to need to keep coming back for refreshers, I think.
Now, I will say one thing though. MyHeritage has a tendency to add new stuff.
Well, yes, I know.
So, you know, a year from now, that might be a little out of date. But
Yeah, okay, so
be warned.
My advice to everyone is dive in and start using MyHeritage, because that's how you become familiar with it and get the most out of it.
Yeah.
So
and especially because you get access to all those tools this week for free.
For free. That's amazing.
Yes.
For in perpetuity. That's really amazing. Yep. That's awesome. Okay. Thanks to all of you for being with us for today's program. I hope you'll join us again on the first Tuesday of November, which is November 7th at 1 p.m. for the presentation by local historian Ross Eric Gibson, who will present his program on why Santa Cruz isn't Los Angeles yet. And you can see that on the calendar on your screen. You can register to receive the Zoom link through the Santa Cruz Library's events calendar. And you enter your email, name and email, and yes, click on the blue register button. You put your name and your email, and you can check the little yes box if you want to receive additional information about events that the Genealogical Society of Santa Cruz County is presenting, and then click on the blue register button, and you will get an email with the Zoom link for the program in November. And we have also in the chat put the link for the Genealogy Society. We invite you to join us if you would like to become a member, and you'll find the membership application there, along with handouts from previous lectures and recordings of programs, and also from the DNA Special Interest Group. So we look forward to seeing you in November 7th at 1 p.m. And thank you for joining us this afternoon. And Pamela, thank you again for your excellent presentation.
Thank you.